Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to pull up my info so that I can share this to the group and so that I can listen and read people's comments and questions. And this is Darius Meibodi. Did I say it right this time? I've only known you for 4 years. Did I say it right?
Perfectly the way you said it.
Which, translates to my body, right?
If you want, yes.
I want.
Your body. You want me there.
I feel like it's just so crazy that that's your name because, like, you work on the light body.
Yeah.
You move people into their light body. You worked on physical bodies before you started working on light bodies. It just makes so much sense to me that your name sounds like my body. I don't know. It just seems very fitting, like almost like you chose it before you.
Of course, we all choose our names. It's not our parents.
Right? Exactly. So I am going to just keep looking down every once in a while so that I can see if people are commenting, but I have plenty of questions to ask you if people aren't seeing us because I know all the things that I want you to say. So let's start with I want to do a little introduction of you and then you can do an introduction of you. So I was introduced to Darius by my wonderful dear sister, Honey, who said that we have to connect, we have to meet. And I've never told you this, but she told me I need to interview you in our first interview, because this is our third interview. And that was in 2019.
Could be, yeah.
Like that. And I thought you were someone else that she I didn't realize you were you. I thought I knew who you were, but I didn't. And so when I came on Zoom with you for the first time, it was like a brand new person that I didn't realize that I was meeting. And then we talked through a whole bunch of things. I actually watched our old video a couple of months ago, and it's just so interesting. One, to see like how I looked and like the energy that I was bringing forward prior to us starting to work together, and like the journey of my ascension process that I've continued in lots of different ways. But also just the topics we talked about being so timely and interesting with, the years that followed and what happened in the world. So it's a fun one to go back and chat and look at and listen to. And then we started working together, and I've had these really amazingly profound, powerful, incredible sessions that I've talked about with so many of my friends, and they've created so many awesome shifts in my life. And one of the biggest things I would say, and I said this to you in our last session, was that I feel like with our sessions and our journey together, I've gone from a place of theoretically understanding things mentally, etc., to actually like embodying those things and those concepts. And I think it's a really hard journey for a lot of light workers, a lot of people in general, to go from that place where we're like, yeah, you have to do this, and this is, what kind of reality are you creating, all of that kind of stuff, to like actually like really doing that and feeling that inside your body. It's such a far leap sometimes. And that's been something that I haven't even really found as powerfully and as quickly and as efficiently anywhere else. So very grateful for the work that we've done together. And it's just been such a cool journey. I'm just so grateful to know you and just appreciate the work that you're doing in the world for humankind. So thank you. Thank you on behalf of the New Earth and everything else. So yeah, if you want to share just a little bit about, what brings you into this space doing the work that you're doing, that would be great.
So thank you very much for your very kind words, and it's a great honor and great pleasure for me working with you and to allowing me to be part of your journey as well a little bit, right? Ultimately, everything comes you. Yeah. So I mean, well, I was born as a doctor. No, I started my journey as a doctor, but I was interested in other things, in spiritual healing as well, in addition to medicine, so it's not like I had no interest at all. But over the course of the years, I was reconnected to the ability while I was living in London to do this, what we call Lightbody integration, which is actually, you can call it a Stargate Ascension. So Stargate Ascension meaning a very accelerated process of the ascension, right? So this is actually more than 20 years ago that I started. And at that time, Ascension was still, even in the spiritual community, very theoretical. It's actually not really spoken about, was a little bit woo-woo for a lot of people, even in the spiritual community, right? So Ascension would happen whenever in the future, right? And a couple of years ago, I was working in the corporate field for pharmaceutical industry. So I basically got the message and the nudging to finally give up on that and fully dedicate my time to the spiritual mission. And so that was 7 years ago. And it was a very important thing, because what we see now, I think with 2020, when all the COVID drama happened, or like at the end of 2019, this is actually on one level also that we really stepped into the middle of the ascension process, right? And what I was very excited about, obviously at COVID was a lot of drama for all of us, but a lot of positive things happened too. Like that I noticed, like since 2020, there's so many channels on YouTube who actually talk about the ascension process, right? So I really see a shift of consciousness, both in humanity at large, as well as in the spiritual community, right? And over the course of it, and also what even for many people looked very abstract, what I was doing is actually for many people, like a lot of people come back for more, it has very tangible results. So being a doctor, a lot of people come to me with medical issues, for starters, whether it's cancer, HIV, chronic renal failure. So things where medicine is very limited, right? People come also with black magic attacks. This is also what I work a lot on. Or simply people want to speed up their ascension process. And these changes are oftentimes achieved. It depends very much on what the person is willing to do, but basically are they willing to change? Of course, also everything has a divine timing, and there's not one right or one wrong, right? I mean, I was at some point very much in 3D. There's nothing wrong about that, right? Because when we're in 3D, we experience polarity to its max, right? This is just coming to an end, and each one has their own timing or time period when this is happening. So there's not a right or wrong from the high dimensional perspective. Only experiences what we're here to have. But as I said, the work really translates. It's not only, even though it happens in the very high dimensions, it channels or trickles very much into 3D as well. Having better health, being happier, having more abundance, being more on the path, this type of thing, right? So you may have some experience with that as well.
Yeah.
And so it's just the question as well, why should we do actually this accelerated Stargate Ascension at this time? Why can I just continue with my regular practice? Of course, everyone can. But what we have at this time now is that the plan is in the middle of the ascension. It's basically like you're in the harbor, the boat is about to leave. You have the choice, either you jump on the boat now, and walk nicely, or you do it very last moment, but you're gonna hang on the anchor and have a wet journey with the boat, or you're gonna stay on the island when the volcano is gonna erupt in in the nearer future as well. So it's really now we have the choice, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. Either if I want to continue my journey on the ascending Earth, I have to adjust or do whatever is within my framework. I have to do the things that permits me to continue in the higher frequencies of Mother Earth, of Gaia, right? And for those who don't do that, we choose to continue with the 3D journey and continue polarity. That's perfectly fine as well. Ultimately, everyone is gonna ascend, because this is the decree for everyone. This is the sacred rhythm, the sacred cycle of the universe. However, we have at this time the opportunity as a whole, as humanity, to ascend, if we wish to do that. Before that, it was like every, I don't know, couple of 100 years, you had one ascended master, you know, but now we have this time, the window is open still to do that, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm listening. I'm just checking. So everyone can be an ascended master.
It's our nature, ultimately. I mean, it's the more we embark on the spiritual journey, it's easy to understand as well. You know, before that is very theoretical, but actually we are an expression of divinity, of God, as with capital G-O-D, and a fraction of that. And the purpose of us is to experience that. So we are an ascended master. The same way you can say as well, I'm a reflection of an archangel, of an Elohim, of an Andromedian, you know. So it just, as we go into 5D, we understand unity consciousness, we're a reflection of each other. And if we go even higher, we see there's only but one soul, you know.
Yes. I think I'm going to start saying Andromedan, Andromedian, because it sounds so much better the way you say it, by the way. Love that. Okay. I love all of that. Agree. Let's just jump right into what session 1 looks like with you. Like, what is it about? What is the Nephilim? What are the keepers, which I call the minions, by the way? I don't know why. The spirit shows the minions from the, I'm sure you don't watch the Black Magic of Disney films, but you know, I like to shield up my TVs when my kids watch them, and it's all good, but safe and protected at all, in all ways, all the time, no worries. But yeah, so my kids loved Despicable Me, especially my younger kids. So there was Gru, right, who was like this big, you know, villain, who was trying to do all these villainous things, and all these minions work for him. And it always is what I see, what I'm shown when you talk about the keepers. So anyway.
Okay, so often
all that stuff, right? Most of those cartoons, I feel like they're topics and things that are kind of already out there in the ethers.
I mean, just look at the movie The Matrix. It's actually, it's like almost like a documentary, right? Yeah. And so maybe with everyone who's watching, you know, it may be easy to understand if we take The Matrix, or at least the first of the Matrix movies, as a reference point to that.
Yeah.
So I mentioned at the beginning, like, people come for different reasons. Not everyone is necessarily consciously on the spiritual path. It's often a trigger. So in the first session, we address as part of that the physical problems, whatever why someone is in. If someone is has a medical challenge, or someone is under energetic attack, like magic attack or whatever. So this is incorporate. This is one part of the session. I can come to that a bit later. The standard main step the standard second big step for the very first session is what we call the body consciousness realignment process. And just from the point of view, so our soul is divine, comes from source, or we're part of source. We come from the high dimensions into the third dimensional reality here. And our physical body is the vehicle for our soul to experience third dimensional reality, to express ourselves in the third dimensional reality with our muscles, with our voice, as well as to perceive the third dimensional reality with our 5 senses. Or some people have more, some people have less, but generally it's 5 senses. Our physical bodies were created by a race of being, or like a consciousness. We call them the Nephilim or Anunnaki. Their main dimension is the 4th dimension, so above the 3rd dimension, where most people think this is the only reality that exists. So then the 4th dimension, they're very good at gene manipulation, and they created our physical vehicle, our bodies, by mixing their DNA with the DNA of whatever was running on the planet as Neanderthal or some other hominoids, and out came the modern man, right? This is actually interesting when you go to the Alien movie, coming back to the Hollywood movies, yeah. Resurrection, right, where Sigourney Weaver discovers that her DNA has been mixed with alien, right? It's actually some truth in that movie as well. But anyway,
yeah.
So in the physical body, we have the soul, right? So if I want to lift my mobile phone, I just think about it and I lift my mobile phone. A lot of these functions in our body, however, happen automatically, like breathing, the heartbeat, the detoxifying of the blood by the liver and the kidney, digestion and stuff like this. So this is done not consciously, but this is done by a different consciousness that exists next to our soul in our body. You call them the minions, I call them keepers of the human legacy. You can call them body elementals. So this is an elemental consciousness. If we can perceive them, they're actually quite cute. They have a childlike mentality.
Yeah.
They like shiny things. They like nice smells. Probably this is how aromatherapy can affect our body as well. And so their job is twofold: to keep our physical body alive, by doing all the metabolism in our body and so on, so making us to continue to breathe even when we sleep. And a job is also for us to help us to stay in 3D so we can have a full 3D experience.
Okay, pause. So I love it. Great. Nephilim, I have read before that people think the Nephilim are giants. Like in the Bible, maybe it's talked about. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
Yeah.
Read it in several different places that they're called giants. And I've also seen people write about Anunnaki, right?
Yes.
As a reptilian race. So how does that all connect with Nephilim? And how does the Nephilim appear to you? And where is it in the body and all of that?
Okay, so the Nephilim is just a Hebrew name for that. Anunnaki is the Sumerian name. It's actually Sumer is, according to conventional history, the oldest civilization in existence. So actually in their scriptures, these cuneiform tablets, they have references to the Anunnaki. Anunnaki apparently stands for those who came from the heavens to earth, right? And so it's just a different name, in the Bible it's like giants. Let's say you have a consciousness, coming up, what name do you give it? It depends very much on your cultural background, your language, what you have, So this is the same, I know in the Bible is a reference that the giants or whatever, or the fallen angels came to earth and lay with a woman of man and got babies with them, right?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, something. And as I said, the Nephilim created humanity in the first place as a slave race. And what they did, they put part of their soul essence into the body as well. So if you have the physical vehicle, the body with etheric, emotional, mental, blah, blah, bodies around, what you can see with Kirlian photography or other forms of imaging, inside you have the divine soul, like the Gia soul. Then you have thousands of these keepers, of these body elementals, of these minions. And then you also have the Nephilim soul, who is, until that very first step, the manager or controller of the keepers, right, of the minions. And because they have polarity still exists in the fourth dimension. So for those who are women, they have a female Nephilim. Those who are men have a male Nephilim, right? So if the Nephilim, so the Nephilim soul, which is inside the body, when I take it out, which is the fifth step, I perceive it often, actually most of the time, it is, because it lives at that time wrapped around these pranic tubes, so from the crown to the base chakra. It has a diameter of like this. It looks like a giant slug, and it has a black metallic skin for most people. I've seen some other colors as well, but typically it's black metallic. Can be red metallic as well, from what I've seen, right? And they can be seen as a reptilian consciousness, right? But bear in mind that not all reptilians are bad, not all reptilians are good, same as not all humans are good or bad, so there's depending on the evolution as well. And if you look at dragons, just to sidetrack a little bit, they're actually the highest evolution of reptilians, who have bring divine energies in, for those who work with dragons, which is fun to do, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, basically before the first step, you have on one side your body consciousness, and on the other side you have these thousands of keepers of the minions of the elementals who are managed or controlled by the Nephilim soul. And these two fractions oppose each other, and there's a big reason for that. So we choose to be voluntarily to be incarnated in the third dimensional reality into this body, or the body that we choose, not only my body, but also other bodies.
My body.
My body. So in order to have the experience.
No one's ever said anything like that to you? No one else like made that joke or connection with you of the my body, that's all me? I'll take credit for it. Okay.
So just we choose to come in here, but our natural tendency is to be, you know, if you pull a rubber band and you let go, it goes straight back where it's coming from. Our soul is part of the divine. This is our where we live. But if we want to come down here in this reality of the third dimension to experience polarity, we have to put filters or blocks in between us and the higher dimension so that we don't go straight back. Because if I'm only in the body for a moment, you know, I don't have the experience of polarity. You know, most people have whatever, at least hundreds of incarnation as a human on the planet. You want to say it's very common. So we need to have like these, let's say, these blocks put into our body that we can have a successful 3D experience. Until now, we've stopped doing that now because of the Ascension process. And this opposition is done, we can see that in our daily life. For example, when I started to meditate and I made dangerous holes into this roof, you know, that prevented me from going to higher dimensions, immediately I received a message, I sit in a very uncomfortable position, right? You know, that brought me straight back into my body. Or the opposite is also, we oppose our body consciousness very often. You know, we eat junk food, we don't sleep enough. If I cannot sleep at nighttime, I drink wine or I take a sleeping pill or whatever, right? You know, so I hate my body, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too old, I'm too bald. You know, so we, instead of having the loving union with the body until then. So this opposition that we have, the soul towards the body consciousness and the body consciousness towards the soul, helps to have this blocked so that we stay really in 3D and have a full 3D experience. So the very first session, the body consciousness realignment, is actually that we change that and start to align our soul with our body consciousness. And instead of that, our minions, our keepers, our body elementals are subjected to the control by the Nephilim. We actually, as the soul, start to guide and to protect all these thousands of elementals in our body, and also make together the decision to undergo the Ascension process. So this is the very first step. So what it does for a lot of people on a day-to-day level, it's very individual, but often people feel much more peaceful. This innate opposition towards the high dimensional light that we have on the cellular level is taken away. So we really allow our body to receive on the cellular level much more high dimensional light, right? And any kind of subsequent spiritual practices, whether it's even acupuncture, homeopathy, or meditation, will be much more profound. Also, if someone has something stored in the opposition of the keepers and the body elementals and the soul, that can be released. For example, I had one client who was smoking. He didn't want to give up smoking, but we did the first step and he stopped from one day to the other after smoking for whatever decades, right? So this is happening as one of the big steps in the first session. The others, as I mentioned briefly, we address very specifically what experiences the person has they want to change, whether it's a disease, you know, inability to heal completely, and so on. You know, so, and often people notice already with the first session a great improvement. From a medical thing, since I'm a doctor as well. So anything what we experience as in medicine as autoimmune diseases, you know, where basically the body attacks itself, or there's an imbalance of the immune system, right? Is positively influenced, or when people had even like a organ transplant, right? Because you actually can explain that. Probably it would go a little bit too far to explain that now, but it's just basically you create a greater harmony as opposed to a fight within the body, right? So that's in a nutshell what happens in the first session.
Okay, seems really simple.
Easy and graceful.
Yeah.
So, but I'm saying as well, it's just for me, it's not to have like people who are dependent on me. It's really for me also to empower people And I explain these things. It can be at the beginning very abstract what I explain, depending on the level. However, I explain these things and also on subsequent session, and it becomes easier and easier. As our perspective starts to get higher, our frequency starts to rise, these things start to make more sense, right? That the greater understanding, because ultimately, when we undergo the ascension process and we will want to become creators of our reality, is what we have to do in the fifth dimension. We cannot choose to continue being the pinball for someone else, whether dark forces or whatever. We have to choose to claim our mastery and become co-creators together with the divine, right? So it's important also to have at least some understanding about how the whole mechanics function. And as I said, I'm always explaining that as well to the person that I'm working with, over the course of the time as well, in order for them to get more and more empowered too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I do feel like it's also a journey to sovereignty, right? The ascension journey is also a journey to sovereignty, because that's kind of one and the same, right? You're removing that idea, like you were saying, of that victim energy, and you're coming into your full empowerment. You're coming into a feeling of creation around your experience.
Absolutely. And you can see that as well. Let's say someone who was born with a silver spoon in their mouth and never experienced poverty or financial poverty. It's when we, at some point, whether in previous incarnation or at a specific incarnation, experience poverty and then have abundance, financial abundance, or whatever forms of abundance, we have a greater understanding of that, a greater consciousness. So if because you can say most of us, well, if not almost all humans, except for the newly born babies, we experience a loss of power. But however, this is a learning experience for us to learn about power. So it's not a mistake, right? We see that on the collective level when we choose to participate in elections, right? So, like I give my power away to a government, to a person, in the hope that they will control me in a nice way, and I benefit from that. So this is something what we experience. So part of that also is to release these things at some point. It doesn't have any space for that in 5D. However, it's not for us to point a finger, you evil person or whatever, you evil party. It is for me to understand, why did I manifest it? Does it still serve me? Or if it doesn't serve me anymore, I want to get out of it, let's transform it. Because as humans, we're extremely powerful, even though we're not meant to know that by those who want to control us,